You're welcome to the newspaper review here on TAF TV. Like you all know, here in the newspaper, we give Nigerians the opportunity to air out their views in regards to the headlines trending on our newspaper. And you know, you'll be surprised. Today, I am your host for today. Eyo Keme is my name. Now, before we get to the street of Port Harcourt, before we give Nigerians the opportunity to air out their voice in regards to the newspaper, now let's dive into the newspaper and see what the headline has for us today. Now, firstly, on the newspaper headline for today being first on the newspaper headline today, we'll be looking at the nations. And first on the nations, we're seeing Atiku, Obi Saraki, Lamidu begins 2027 colligation talk. Details of that is found on page 2. And still on the nations, we are seeing productivity-based wage coming from workers. Details of that is found on page 3. And the main headline here on the nation newspaper says FEC, that is the Federal Executive Council, adopts CNG powered vehicles for ministries and agencies. Details of that is found on page 2. And still on the nation's newspaper here, we are having Fubara to raise probe panel on Wike's government. Now this is Fubara coming to tell us that he's going to start looking into Wike's government and is going to take clear analysis and see how the government really went during his tenure. Now details of that you can find out on page 2. Now, still on the nation's newspaper, we're seeing Labour seeks reversal of electricity tariff rise. TUC, NLC, Pocket, NERC discourse. Details of that is found on page 4. Now, this is Labour coming out to tell us that they are still pressing on the button that federal government should reduce the electricity tariff. Now, details of that, just like I said, is found on page 4. And moving on, in the newspaper, we'll be considering. All right, next on the newspaper, we're considering the Vanguard. Now, first on the newspaper headline here on the Vanguard, it says, Fubara to probe governance in last 8 years. Now, this is still the story of similarly Fubara having to analyze the past government of Wike. Details of that is found on page 12. Now, Guba Post, INEC resumes voters registration in Edo, Ondo State. Details of that, you can find it on page 7 and page 9. Now, still on the Vanguard newspaper, we are seeing Tinubu directs mandatory procurement on CNG, that is conserved natural gas powered vehicles, and is telling all ministers to actually adhere to it. So that's to say, we will no longer be using our local fuel. We're diving into using gas. Details of that is still found on the Vanguard newspaper on page 8. Now, still on the Vanguard newspaper, we are saying the headline here says Labour protests disconnect NERC, TCN, discourse office. Now, this is still Labour protesting over the hike in electricity tariff. Now, you can find details of that on the Vanguard on page 5. Details of that on page 5. All right, now moving on, still on the Vanguard newspaper, we're seeing CBN will retain high interest rates to tame inflation. Details of that is found on page 20. But lastly, on the Vanguard newspaper, we'll be looking at on page 15. It says 1 killed, many wounded in fresh Abia Cross River border clash. This is yet another level of clash that is coming up. Details of that is found on page 15 of the Vanguard newspaper. Now, moving on to the next one. All right, now lastly on our newspaper review here, we're considering the New Telegram. Now here on the New Telegram, we are seeing the front pages. Fubara vows to probe Wike's administration, moves to set panel of inquiry. Now this story is making rounds on almost all the newspaper headlines. So we're actually wishing our Sim Fubara well on this examine task to actually examine our last administration of in person of Wike. Now, details of that is found on page 2. And still on the New Telegram, we're seeing federal government pushes more Nigerians into poverty, crippling businesses, NLC, TUC. Details of that is found on page 3 and page 8. Now, this is still in regards to the electricity tariff. Now, this is still in regards to the electricity tariff. Details of that is found on the New Telegram on page 8. All right, now lastly on the New Telegram, we'll be considering on page 26, we're saying Guba, INEC to resume voter registration in Edo and Ondo State. Now, we have seen details of this on other headlines. You can still read up on the New Telegram on your page 26. All right, now, lastly, we'll be looking at page 2 and page 5. We're seeing Tinubu mandate MDAs to buy CNG powered vehicles. Now, this is still in regards to the conserve natural gas that our president is still pushing, and I hope and pray that this gets to see the light of day. All right, now, this is all we'll be considering in regards to our newspaper headline. Now, let's hit to the street like we always do. Let's give Nigerians the opportunity to air out their voice in regards to the newspaper headlines. Do well to stay tuned. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sorry, I would like your thoughts on the new telegram that says Fubara vows to probe Wike's administration, moves to set up panel of inquiry. Now, this is Fubara finally coming out to tell us that he's going to investigate his godfather. What's your thoughts about that?
I don't think that will be possible because for me it is too late. This is 1 year in office after his predecessor hand over the seat to him. So he's coming to investigate me after 1 year is baseless. There is no meaning about that because I think there is saboteurs, people that is enduring him to set up this panel of investigation about the past administration. Him too was among the team. So I don't think it's going to work. It's not going to work.
Please excuse me. As a patriotic Nigerian, what is your thought about godfatherism in our politics? Because it looks as if it has come to stay. This godfatherism matter because this is really the problem behind Wike and Fubara. What's your take on godfatherism?
In the area of godfatherism, it's not going to stop. It will continue because the young, vibrant youth who is capable and have good agenda for this country, they are not giving space. There is no money coming to the ticket for governorship. I think it's almost 100 million. And many of our youths who is ready, who have good intention of this country, they don't have such money. So if somebody is coming out to fund you, there must be an agreement towards that. So you will not think that it will not stop. It's not. It's going to be a continual process.
Actually, and it's because of the agreement that they had. That's why it's bringing up this fight now.
Yes, it's bringing up the fight because the ticket was not bought by Fubara money. It was Wike that funded all those processes, including the assembly member. So I don't think it's going to work.
Now, it is very funny that as of today, Fubara is telling us that he doesn't seem to see an end to the fight between him and Wike. That's why he's finally setting up a panel. So at this point, did you think that this panel will actually yield any fruit?
Yes, it will not yield any fruit, but it's a normal process. Since he has stepped up and somehow it may serve as a trade that is going to open in India, but it's not going to work because already the man in question is a federal might. Yes, he's still in power, so he has all what it takes to manipulate all the investigation.
Do you think our president would actually support this?
Coming to our president is a president of 36 states. Is the one that supersedes every. But there is a state power. There is a limit that you are going to go for each state. So I don't think the power of a president over the state is limited.
No problem. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. All right, good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning, my guy.
It feels good to have you here.
Very, very good.
All right, this is our very own Obed Jerry. We're glad to have you here. Now, we first will be considering the nations. Now, the headline here says FEC, that is the Federal Executive Council, adopts CNG, that is the conserved natural gas powered vehicles for ministries and agencies. Now, this is as yesterday, our president came out to say there was a proposal that was submitted, and it was to get vehicles for ministries. So our president returned them and said, okay, let's have more of conserved natural gas vehicles. Now, this is like Nigeria moving a step further into another level. What's your take on that?
Right. We Nigeria as a Nigerian government, we always advocate for growth, development. But one of our challenges is misplaced priority, not knowing when to do something. Okay, if you are saying that you want to adopt this buses that use gases, that it will help us save costs and to save our ecosystem, quite all right. But why now that we are going through crisis, why now that we are trying to battle this petroleum subsidizing
We are not done
method,
with that one
we are
yet.
not done with that. And then during this Tinubu's administration, several ministers, several House of Rep members, several senators have been given cars that use gas, that use petrol. So now what happens to those cars?
Okay.
Would they be retrieved and
No way.
resold?
No way.
Then what happens to this person? Because we saw the briefing, and how the briefing was going was like it was coming like it was an authoritative statement that okay, we would start to eradicate these normal petroleum buses.
And they said it to be in 2 weeks' time.
Exactly, and then adopt gas buses. Now, what about persons that have bought cars that were using petrol before now? What about these persons that started car businesses? Who would patronize them? Remember that for them to clear these cars in coming out from their containers, they are charged almost double that they were charged last year. So let's say if you bought a container worth 10 million naira, you are spending up to 6 to 7 million naira to clear these cars, and you bought it. Then you added your amount that you bought it, the amount that you use in clearing this your clearing and forwarding activities. Then you are trying to like make profits. Remember, for every business that everybody tries, you want to make profits. Now you are, after your calculations, you are trying to make profit. Then the government now comes out to say, okay, we want to eradicate using these buses that use petrol, and we want to adopt gases. Now after you've made this person spend a huge lot of amount to buy and clear these goods, who would now buy these buses? Who would now buy these cars that use petroleum? So you see where the issue lies. The government does not. The government is for the people. That is a democratic government, for the people, by the people, and with the people, to work with the people. But it seems like the federal government is not working with. Federal government would always say they want the betterment of the people, they want the betterment of the country. Remember that this is a democratic government, for the people and by the people, to benefit these people. But we could see several times that they will end up jeopardizing the happiness and the joy of the people. Take for example, during the Muhammad Buhari's administration, they proposed this naira redesign policy, that they want to eradicate this vote buying and all of that for the benefit of the people. But we could remember how the people suffered. Remember, after all the suffering, they did not for once, even till today, come out to apologize to the general public that okay, we are sorry for these measures that we took, we are sorry for these decisions that we took that affected us, the people that you are doing this thing for. Till today, the new naira note is not in huge circulation as they proposed it over 1 year now. So back to these gas buses. The gas buses would help us save costs, but I feel the federal government should do it in this way: bring only free buses, or as I suggest the federal government should do it this way. Okay, let people that are using their cars and buses that use petrol continue using it. Transport system continue the way it is, but bring out these gas buses. Bring out these gas buses, buses that will use gas. Put it as public transport. Put it stationed at different junctions. You as a person now, it is up to you to decide whether you want to use the normal priced transport system or to use gas buses. Then with time you start eradicating it gradually. By then these persons are aware that these gas buses are coming into play, and then they would reduce their sales of petroleum used buses, petroleum used cars. If the person bought 10 cars from abroad and spent huge money, before that span of like 2 years before the gas buses would go into circulation, huge circulation, by that time the person would have sold out those cars, made their profits, and moved on, maybe switch into business or start selling gas buses too.